Hi, investigators, and welcome to my channel. They hate us, they scare us, they attract us. Real monsters in human form, serial killers represent the scariest and yet most interesting people on Earth, whose horrific deeds make us wonder why. Some people were self-victims, some suffered from serious mental disorders, and some may just be really bad people. Regardless of the psychological makeup of these killers, serial killer stories are filled with gruesome and shocking elements that chill us to the bone, but always keep us coming back for more. What makes someone a serial killer? Are they the product of bad genes, environmental factors, or something worse? If you're curious, watch till the end. A serial killer is someone who kills at least two people in separate incidents at different times. Although serial murder is not formalized by a legal code, the media and public consciousness often captures the crimes of serial killers, especially in cases where there are many victims or the killings are carried out in gruesome ways. Throughout history, people have committed horrific crimes, and this video of serial killers to keep you up at night truly reflects this. H.H. Holmes. Chicago has its share of murderers, but perhaps H.H., a druggist who turned a hotel into a palace of torture. No one is more haunted than Holmes. Before the 1893 World's Fair, Holmes moved to Chicago and began setting up a three-story hotel, a maze of gas lines, secret passageways and trapdoors, halls to copses, chutes to basements, soundproofing, and all manner of evil tricks, including torture devices. The gas allowed Holmes to attack his guests before the worst happened, which was often about to happen on his operating tables. He later burned the bodies in the building's furnace, sold the skeletons to medical schools, and ran life insurance scams. In all, he committed more than 30 murders before he was hanged in 1896, only after a fellow swindler turned him in for failing to make a financial deal. Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway is America's deadliest serial killer in terms of confirmed murders. As a boy, Ridgway had sexual fantasies with his mother. He also had a bedwetting problem until he was 13. When he was 16, Ridgway stabbed a 6-year-old boy. Fortunately, the child survived the attack. As a young adult, Ridgway served in the Vietnam War, where he had sex with local prostitutes. Ridgway was a sex addict and involved with prostitutes. It was reported that he killed 71 women and girls. Fortunately, Ridgway now works at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer began killing in 1978 when he was just 18 years old and was not arrested for murder until 1991 after a victim escaped and led police back to Dahmer's Milwaukee, Wisconsin home. It was there that some gruesome details of his murderous life were revealed through photographs of mutilated bodies and body parts strewn across the apartment. He had a vat of acid that he used to dispose of his victims. In all, Dahmer killed 17 people, mostly young men of color. He was imprisoned twice, the first time for abuse and the second time for murder, and he was killed by a fellow inmate in 1994. Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman, Dr. Death, is believed to have killed at least 218 patients, but the total may be closer to 250. The doctor practiced in London and held two different offices between 1972 and 1998, all of which were killed. Shipman wasn't caught until a red flag was raised by several people, including a caretaker who was surprised by the number of cremation certificates. He is in bed during the day, not at night. The police mishandled the investigation, killing Shipman until he became greedy and tried to stop up a will for a victim in which he was named beneficiary, leading to suspicion of the victim's daughter. He was eventually convicted in 2000 and committed suicide in 2004 while in prison. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, a construction worker known as outgoing by his suburban neighbors, became involved in politics and even acted as a clown for birthday parties. He was not a clown. Gacy came under suspicion in 1978 when a 15-year-old boy who was last seen with him disappeared. It wasn't the only time families of missing boys pointed a finger at Gacy, but it was the first time authorities took them seriously. Soon after, a search warrant gave police access to Gacy's home, along with the scent of nearly 30 bodies in a 4-foot crawl space under his home. He was convicted of 33 counts of murder, subjected to additional rape and torture, and executed by lethal injection in 1994. Belle Gunness, known as Lady Bluebeard, the woman immigrated to America from Norway in 1881 and settled in Chicago, where she married a fellow Norwegian immigrant. The couple had 4 children and ran a sweet shop. By 1900, the warehouse had mysteriously burned down and Guinness's husband had died. Although both were under dubious circumstances, Guinness was able to collect some insurance policy payments and allowed him to purchase a farm in LaPorte, Indiana. She soon remarried and her second husband died 8 months later. Guinness claimed he suffered fatal burns from hot water and was hit in the head with a heavy meat grinder. An autopsy was conducted and no evidence of foul play could be produced, leading to another large insurance payout. She then began placing newspaper ads seeking a third husband, requiring prospective spouses to move to her Indiana farm. Several would-be squatters disappeared for good. Only one made it out alive, reportedly after seeing a sinister-looking gunman standing over him. No one knows for sure how many people Belle Gunness killed, but it seems she herself met a gruesome end. In February 1908, a fire destroyed the farm. Among the debris were the bodies of Guinness's remaining children and the decapitated corpse of a woman. Although officials identified the wreck as a wreck, suspicion quickly spread because the body was much smaller than the tall, heavy-set Belle. The search for her missing head led to the gruesome discovery of a dozen bodies, including several missing chefs and children. Ray Lamphere, a former rancher who claimed that she had shot and threatened her life several years earlier, was arrested and charged with the crime, but only convicted of arson. Belle's true fate is still unknown, but unverified sightings continued for decades after her death. Ed Gein. The brutal and gruesome acts that inspired Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre grew up in an isolated area of Wisconsin. He was the abused child of an alcoholic father and the child of a puritanical and domineering mother who instilled in her son a pathological fear of both women and sex. When his father, brother, and mother died within a 5-year period, he was left alone on the family farm, and he eventually fenced off parts of the house and turned it into a shrine to his mother. 13 years later, local police arrive at the farm following a tip about missing hardware store owner Bernice Warden. They found Warden's headless corpse hanging upside down from the rafters. A search of the possessions included a hall of horrors where human body parts became furniture as chairs and bowls, faces used as wall decorations, and a coat made from human torso. Many of these gruesome items were stolen from the house, from the graves, and from the bodies that were already dead. But he had killed another woman in addition to Verdon. Said that he would use the body parts to assemble a new version of his beloved mother. Gein suffered from schizophrenia and was declared unfit to stand trial. A decade later, he was convicted of 1 murder but was declared insane at the time of the crime. He spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital. In conclusion, the truth is that no one really knows, and despite the efforts of modern criminology to decipher the mind of a typical serial killer, we have yet to arrive at a definitive explanation. However, one thing we do know is that many serial killers have experienced early childhood trauma, such as sexual or physical abuse. Trauma is the most common aspect of the lives of history's worst serial killers. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching and follow for more.